sea battles, plundering, gold, and rum. This is the life of pirates as imagined by popular culture, such as the Pirates of the Caribbean and Treasure Island. But how truthful is this depiction of pirates? Join me in today's video as we interrogate Hollywood's image of the golden age of piracy in order to truly uncover the lives of those who roam the seas under the black flag. One of the biggest matters to sort through when examining the lives of pirates is their diet, which Hollywood presents usually as entirely consisting of rum. Pirates did drink water, however, although storing it did present a problem, both practically and hygienically. The wooden barrels used to store it could easily split. The water inside the barrels could also become stagnant, harbouring microorganisms and bacteria, which were harmful to those who drank it. This meant fresh water would have to be restocked regularly or mixed with other beverages, usually alcohol, to make it clean and drinkable. These concoctions, or punches, often were flavoured with sugar, spices and fruit to make them more palatable. Grog, for example, combined water, rum, lime and sugar. Also, a drink known as flip was a combination of small beer and brandy, which was spiced and sweetened. The most popular spirit consumed was rum, because it lasted in the hot climate of the Caribbean and also would have been cheaply produced from the outputs of the sugar produced in the area. Other imported types of alcohol were also drunk, but these were considered luxury items that were bought or more often plundered, such as wine or brandy. Basic ration food provided the pillar of what pirates ate, due to the difficulties of preserving food in the dampness of ships. These rations included beans, salted fish or meat, usually beef, and hardtack, which was a flatbread which was dried out to the point of preservation. These were consumed alongside staple foods cultivated in the Caribbean and Americas, including beans, sweet potatoes, yams, corn, and cassava. These foods, although not completely preserved, lasted longer than other produce, which would spoil faster. This diet would be supplemented with fresher produce, which included dairy, cheese, fish, seafood, crustaceans and meat, such as chicken, goat, pork, turtle, beef, pigeon, duck and other fowl. Fresh fruit and vegetables were also desired which grew in the hot climate, such as limes, lemons, oranges and coconuts. While sailing on ships, pirates were creative with the way they consumed food. For example, they cooked dumplings which were known as doughboys, which they consumed alongside their usual rations. They also cooked something which was known as salmagundi, a meal where meat, or sometimes fish, was marinated in wine and spices, and then combined with a range of other food, including anchovies, eggs, olives, cabbage, mango, pickled herring. The list was extensive. This mixture of food was then further seasoned with salt and pepper, garlic and other spices such as mustard seeds. The fresh produce was not always something which pirates had access to, however, especially if they were unable to dock to resupply. This could result sometimes in periods without much food, as well as other health issues, such as scurvy, which could result in tooth loss, muscle ache, and in the worst instances, death. The quality of food which the pirates ate too was not always the most ideal. Fresh meat and fish could rot, and hardtack could be riddled by weevils, for example. But for many pirates, this was better than the acute and constant starvation which they would face if they stayed on land, working in other occupations. When we imagine pirates, we imagine eye patches, beards, tattered clothes and bandanas, essentially clothing different from anything else in this period. But in reality, Pirates' clothes very much reflected the garb of sailors and the trends of the outside world with practicality in mind. Leather shoes could have been worn, both sea boots or shoes, to offer protection from the water and elements. However, some pirates opted to be barefoot as it allowed for greater grip and dexterity. Shirts would have been worn as a base layer. These would have been T-shaped in style with full balloon-like sleeves. These came in a range of colours and patterns. Waistcoats and overcoats were worn, longer in shape. These layers would not have always been worn, however, in the beating heat of the Caribbean sun. Clothes would have been made out of linen, wool, cotton, or even canvas. Other materials such as silk and calico were expensive and aspirational, but they were more so accessible for pirates than ordinary men, since these expensive materials would have been taken during ship raids and would have been kept if they were not sold on. Knee-length breeches could have been worn by pirates, but it was more likely that they would have donned longer trousers. These were known as slops, and were worn by all seafarers during this period, including sailors in the navy and those on merchant vessels, not only because of their practicality, but also because of their ability to be widely produced at a cheap price. Headgear was worn by pirates to offer protection from the heat of the sun as well as the water, hats, bandanas and caps. However, pirates' clothes were not just simply about practicality. As Beverly Lemire states, historical actors were well aware of the power of clothes to make or unmake their status, to declare their loyalties, or distinguish them from those who they despised. This can be seen in the clothing of pirates. For example, wealthier pirates adorned themselves with silk sashes, frock coats, golden jewellery, feathered hats, and other expensive items in order to display the wealth that they accumulated in their raids. Calico Jack even gained his nickname from the material which he always wore. Clothes were a part of the very image the pirates projected. They were used to create fear, open up new opportunities, adopt new identities, and to reinforce reputations which piracy depended upon. So whilst the clothing of pirates might not have reflected Hollywood films, they still were a vital component of pirates' lives. The conditions which pirates lived in depended upon many factors, the foremost being the size of the crew and the ship which they were aboard. Despite depictions on screen, pirate ships did not tend to be great man-of-wars, but lighter vessels such as sloops, schooners or brigantines. This meant that spaces aboard pirate ships had to be multifunctional to serve the daily needs of the crew. Cargo holds served as spaces to sleep in with hammocks, for example. There also tended to be a communal space, where meals were eaten and free time was spent. A separate kitchen space was also a commonality, as were the separate quarters for the captain and sometimes other high-ranking positions. Efforts were made to maintain hygiene. Sometimes ships were fumigated, as it was believed that disease was spread via bad air, known as miasma. Decks were also swabbed and scrubbed with liquids which had cleansing properties, like vinegar or salt. But life aboard a ship could be unpleasant. Lighting was poor, and there were pests and cramped conditions. Foul odours were often present too, with the persistent damp of the sea mixed with the smells of the many men, pets, and sometimes livestock which were kept aboard vessels. But these conditions were never definitive. Ships docked on land, either in ports, pirate havens, or on islands, which meant that pirate crews could spend time away from the life at sea. When aboard the ship, pirate spirits were kept up through a variety of means. Dice, card, and ball games were played, but not always with a wager, because on some ships, gambling was banned to avoid conflict. Sports could also be played, or mock trials were held. in which the trials pirates would face when captured were satirised. Storytelling, music and singing sea shanties also livened up the lives of pirates as they went about their work to maintain and sail the ship. We might be tempted to think of pirates in the same way as the navy, lorded over by the captain. However, pirate ships had a much more looser structure than the naval ships of the time, with captains at the top followed by the quartermaster, who was in charge of things such as discipline and dividing plunder. The boatswain was responsible for the day-to-day maintenance and running of the ship. These positions were followed by skilled positions, such as the cook, navigator, surgeon, carpenters, coopers and gunners, and below them were deckhands and seamen. Pirates were also different from the deeply hierarchical nature of the early modern world because there was great diversity amongst pirates. Pirate ships were not divided down national lines, but instead, people from different places would work alongside each other. On Samuel Bellamy's crew, for example, there were people of French, African, Dutch, British, Native American, Spanish and Swedish descent. Pirate ships were also places where people who would have otherwise been marginalised, such as escaped slaves, the working class and women, would find the opportunities to exert agency in ways which were hard to find on land. This was because pirates were democratic. Their captains were elected and could lose their position if the crew lost faith in them. A vote was given to every person on a ship in matters such as whether to enact a raid or not. To safeguard equality, ships' articles were created and enforced. These ship articles were essentially a code which the crew consented to live by when they joined. These differed from ship to ship, but some include Ned Low's rule of if any jewels, gold or silver is found on board of a prize to the value of 8 pieces, and the finder does not deliver it to the quartermaster in 24 hours' time, shall suffer what punishment the captain and majority of the company think. Or John Philip's code, which stated, "That man that shall not keep his arms clean, fit for an engagement, or neglect his business, shall be cut off from his share, and suffer such other punishment as the captain and company shall think fit." Furthermore, the plunder taken from prizes was distributed equally amongst the crew, with extra shares given only to the high-ranking officers, the captain and quartermaster. A share of the prize was often put aside too, in order to provide compensation to crew members who had become seriously injured whilst on duty. This highlights the egalitarian nature of pirates, since they had a proto-welfare system in which the ill and disabled members of crew were not abandoned. So whilst the clothing, food and living conditions that pirates experienced at sea perhaps does not measure up to the romantic image which the media presents, there is a reason why pirates' image is so intertwined with the concept of freedom. Life aboard a pirate ship was an experience unlike anything else in the early modern world, since it broke with the rigidity of land life and afforded autonomy to people who would otherwise lack power. Hi there, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider liking and subscribing. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok page which I have linked below. Again, thank you so much for watching. I have been Our Historia, and until next time.